are to follow the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. مَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. Take what the Prophet has given you. But how do I know that these hadiths, which we have today, are the actual words of the Prophet? The Prophet really said them for me to obey them. Maybe it is these narrators who misunderstood the Prophet, and in their own words they wrote the hadith for us. And sometimes people can misunderstand the speaker. Even in our times that happens. Sometimes I'll say something and then someone in the audience will misunderstand. He'll go out and say, oh, tonight the Sayyid said this. Especially the Prophet would speak very concisely. Every word counts. So it's very easy to make mistakes in it. So how do we know that the hadiths we have are accurate? First of all, this is a dilemma, a challenge, a problem that both Shia and Sunnis recognize. In fact, if you look at the history of Bukhari, in Bukhari we have about 7,100 hadiths, about. Now if you omit those hadiths that are repeated, redundant hadiths, you have about 5,000 hadiths in the book of Bukhari. Bukhari says, I took these 5,000 hadiths from how many? From 600,000 hadiths. And out of the 600,000 hadiths that he examined and he dealt with and he evaluated, he said these 5,000 are the sahih hadiths in his opinion. So that means out of 600,000 you only believe that 5,000 are sahih. That means a lot of the hadiths we have, you don't know if they're sahih or not. That in itself tells you we have a problem. And he says, I evaluated them. Meaning he's looked at each hadith and he's come up with these 5,000 hadiths. So that in itself raises a red flag here. Something is not right. For 40 years, every hour you're analyzing 2 hadiths, that really doesn't make sense. Because if he's working on, let's say, 12 hours a day, that means he's working on how many hadiths a day? 41. Divided that by 12, that's like 4 or 5 hadiths per hour. So to go back to our point, both Sunnis and Shia realized that we had a problem. There were many, many hadiths that were fabricated. In fact, if we look at the Sunni hadith, upon research, we can verify that over 300,000 hadiths were fabricated. 300,000 hadiths were fabricated. So that's one point that we're dealing with. Another point is an-naqlu bil-ma'na. When you take a hadith and you are conveying it in your own meaning. Let me give you an example. Ammar al-Sabati was one of the companions of Al-Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. He was not that fluent in Arabic. One day, he went to the companions of Al-Imam Al-Sadiq, like Muhammad ibn Muslim and Zurara, and he told them something. They were shocked. He told them, I heard Al-Imam Al-Sadiq saying that the nawafil, the sunnah prayers, the nawafil are wajib. You have to pray them. He said, no. Al-Imam Al-Sadiq never said that. He's like, no, I myself heard him say that. So they went to Al-Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and they told him, oh Imam, Ammar is claiming that you said the sunnah prayers are wajib. Is that true? Did you say that? The Imam said, no, he misunderstood me. I said something, he understood something else. They told him, what did you tell him? The Imam alayhi salam said, I was explaining to him that when you're praying your faridah, your wajib prayers, if you're not concentrating on your salah, then your salah may not be accepted. If you concentrate in half of your salah, Allah will give you half of your salah. If 1/4, 1/4. Then the Imam tells Ammar al-Sabati, but if you pray the sunnah prayers, the nafila tukammil al-faridah, it compensates for any shortcomings you had in the faridah. See, that's the benefit of nafila, salatul layl, nafilatul dhuhr, nafilatul asr. If your wajib prayer wasn't the best, Allah will use the nafila and He will complete the wajib prayer for you. He'll give you the full reward for it. Ammar, he misunderstood the Imam. He thought the Imam was telling him the Sunnah is now Fariḍah. See, he misunderstood. And that's why you had a problem now in this hadith. Now, sometimes this would happen. This is one reason why we have at-tanaqud fil hadith, at-ta'arud fil hadith, why we have a contradiction in the hadiths. Because you had certain narrators who would misunderstood the Prophet, who would misunderstood the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So this is a concern that we have in our hadiths. That is why our scholars do the following in order to make sure that the hadith is a correct hadith. First of all, we look at the chain, the sanad. That's very important. Who's narrating this hadith? Is it a reliable person? Is it a concise person or no? The Holy Quran says, إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. The Quran says if someone is a fasiq, is not trustworthy, is sinful, is not mindful of God, and they bring you news, then you have to do research. فَتَبَيَّنُوا. Go and do research. You know, if someone brings you rumors, don't just accept them. Is this person truthful or not? Is this person really reliable or not? What does this verse in the Quran mean? That if a adil comes, see, what's the implied meaning? If I tell you, if a fasiq comes, do research before you accept their hadith. That means if a just, adil person who is reliable and trustworthy comes, do you accept their hadith or no? Yes, that's the implied meaning. That's the mafhum. That you accept their hadith if that person is just and reliable. So the first thing that a scholar does, we look at the chain and the sanad. Who's narrating this hadith? Are they reliable or not? I go back to the books of Najashi, for example, who was a scholar in ilm al-rijal, in the science of biographies. What does he say about him? So-and-so narrator, was he reliable? Was he not reliable? Shaykh al-Tusi, what does he say about him? Because they were experts in this field. So if I find that the sanad, the chain of the hadith is solid, it's good, then I examine the content. Is the content compatible with the Quran or not? Is it compatible with other narrations of the Ahlul Bayt or not? Now for us, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, sometimes in the books of hadith, some people would play with them, like Al-Mughira ibn Sa'id. Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, he curses Al-Mughira ibn Sa'id. Al-Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam curses him. He says, Al-Mughira ibn Sa'id dassa fi kutubi ashab abi. He played around with the books of hadith from my father Al-Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. He would add things, he would delete things. Then later Imams of Ahlul Bayt, like Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, they would examine these books of hadith and they would tell the Shia, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, which hadith is correct and which is not. So we depend on later Imams of Ahlul Bayt to correct our understanding of the hadith. The later Imams of Ahlul Bayt, they would correct our understanding of the hadith. If some narrators fabricated hadiths, or they misunderstood what Al-Imam al-Sadiq said, what Al-Imam al-Baqir, Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam made it known to his companions. He would tell them, bring me the books of hadith, and they would discuss it with Al-Imam al-Ridha. If there was a problem in the hadith, Al-Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam would notify them. So a lot of the hadiths in the Shia school of thought were corrected through later Imams who came and they told the Shia, no, this hadith, they misunderstood it, this hadith was fabricated. And so through the blessings of the later Imams of Ahlul Bayt, many of our hadiths were corrected in history.